Uh, now we
Right.
can go.
Okay. Now we can go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome along to our weekly podcast, The Alien Spaceship, with me, Trevor Gear, and he calls me Bruv.
And me, M. Hickins, and he calls me Cuz. He calls me bruv. You call me bruv.
I call you Cuz. I say we will improve our professionalism as time goes by, but I
Yeah,
actually
it goes.
call you Cuz,
It,
Bruv. I mean, yeah, I
yeah,
call
it
you
goes.
Cuz, Bruv.
Yeah,
But that's not
it
right,
calls me
is it?
cuz. Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I
it
call
is.
you
Yeah,
Cuz.
yeah,
I do.
yeah. It calls me cuz. Yeah, welcome to the alien spaceship. So, what have you got in stock for us today, bruv?
Well, a couple of things we've sort of touched on before, possibly, but within a different context today. But I thought I would start by not actually doing an advert at all, but with something that will maybe a bit relevant to something we're going to discuss, and that is, I don't know whether that's the right way round. Is that not
Yeah,
the
it
right way
is.
round to you?
Yes,
Yeah.
thoughts of
Well, that
intricate simplicity.
yeah. Now this is not an advert for me, I assure you, but that this is a small poetry book I published a few years ago now with my poetry. Now, that's not the reason I'm saying that. I wanted to find something relevant to put on the beginning, on the inside cover, and a phrase that for some reason stuck with me for a long time, and it still comes to mind occasionally, is this: I have no gun, but I can spit.
Right.
Now,
Okay.
you may say, well, what's that about? What's the context? And I cannot remember at all. Just bear with me a second. I'm just going to shut down the noise. Yeah, so I have no gun, but I can spit. And I thought, yeah, that's an interesting phrase. I mean, it may have been from a comedic type of poet or something like that. But I thought, yeah, I'll try and paraphrase that into something that's relevant for me. So I put on the inside cover something that probably is fairly true of me. I have not peace, but I have my pen. So rather than I have no gun, but I can spit, I said, I have not peace, but I have my pen. And that may be relevant to something we're going to talk about now, that easy to express ourselves, particularly men outside of the gender line. Men particularly find it hard to talk about their problems, perhaps their issues, and some women as well. But I think women generally are much easier about sharing their thoughts, their feelings, etc. And therefore, if we're looking at this subject, and it's not going to be just a miserable subject, it's an interesting story, I hope, of suicide and assisted suicide. And the link there could be that maybe we, particularly men, should learn to express ourselves a bit more rather than bottling everything up. Now, whether that would ultimately make a difference to the numbers of suicides and the fact that three-quarters of suicides in the UK are men is a moot point. But the story I wanted to raise with you and to talk about, a couple of weeks ago, we said, or we talked about assisted dying. And I think you said after we discussed it that you don't agree with assisted dying. Would you say that's true now?
Yeah, I can't remember if I said that I didn't agree with it per se, but I did say that, it was a difficult one to, and I did bring up the BBC, something I saw on the BBC Panorama program that I saw, and I said, well, I would have said outrightly that I did not believe in it or I did not support it.
Mm.
But after watching that program, I'm a bit on the fence. Um, but leaning towards not being in support of it. But I am on the fence, but just slightly leaning towards
Yeah.
life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if after this story, as I say, it's been in the news in the last 2 or 3 weeks, although you may have missed it, I don't know. A lady, a 56-year-old lady from the West Midlands, her name is Wendy Duffy. Well, she was in a situation where 4 years ago she lost her only son. Now, she always dreamt of being a mother, and although she never married, she had a partner for some time. And although pregnancy apparently was going to be difficult for her for health reasons, she did get pregnant, and she had Mark, 23. He was 23 years old 4 years ago. And very sadly, in a bad accident at home, he choked to death on a small tomato, a cherry tomato. And he lived at home with his mother, who was upstairs. I think she'd gone to bed. But anyway, she discovered him the next morning, and she tried CPR and so on, called the emergency services. I think he was in hospital for 4 days, and then they turned off the life support machine because they think the doctor said he was brain dead, etc. Now, Wendy, as I say, she was now 56. She found it very hard to cope, as anybody would, obviously, losing their only child. And she tried everything. She was resolute that she would not get over it, because I don't believe really that people ever get over these terrible things. But you learn to cope. Perhaps you have managing strategies. Anyway, she tried everything. She had counseling. She tried antidepressants. She went to all sorts of lengths to try and overcome and to re-establish her life and so on. But she couldn't do it. And 9 months after his death, she had made a suicide attempt. Now, she took some drugs, and as it turned out, the, she was saved simply because her friend tried to contact her, probably was aware of Wendy's mental condition. I mean, she was a perfectly healthy woman, but she knew she was struggling. And anyway, she called the police because she hoped against hope there was nothing wrong. The police broke in and found her, and she was rushed to hospital. She was in hospital for 2 weeks, I believe, on a ventilator, and they saved her life. But in fact, when she first became conscious again, they felt she had locked in syndrome, because she said all she could do was to move her to blink yes and no. So can you imagine trying to commit suicide because of your mental pain or whatever, and then waking up to the fact that you cannot move at all except your eyelids? Anyway, that got better. She was then discharged voluntarily, really, to the psychiatric ward, but she discharged herself overnight after one night from there. Now, she thought about suicide. She talked to her family, and she discovered by chance one day on the news, actually, a place in Switzerland, not the Digitas one, which I think is the very famous assisted dying company, but this was called Pegasus. They were a little less, how can we say, a little less strict on what they required, but nonetheless, you have to go through a lot of hoops and jumps to achieve it. Anyway, she contacted them. She got an online application, which she completed. And then there was the most rigorous set of interviews. And Pegasus, they contacted her family members to make sure that they were being told the truth, etc., etc. And so her application was formally kind of accepted, at which point she paid, just to fill in the details, she had to pay £5,000 and the balance of £10,000 a few weeks after that. Now, Pegasus is a non-profit organisation, but the clients, as they call them, have to pay for their own medication, all the drugs involved, and the doctors, the time, etc., with a small amount going to the Swiss state as well. So this was all lined up, and she obviously, as I say, was heavily interviewed. She had four sisters and two brothers, and they all naturally tried to talk her out of this, but she was resolute that her life was agony. That was her own word, and that nothing would change her mind. She told the siblings that she had considered jumping off a motorway bridge or going in front of a train, but she said the trauma she knew that would cause people who will be sort of involved, either hitting her with their car or the train driver. She said she couldn't do that. She would not do that. So she decided she would end her life in this assisted dying way. Now, just to sort of come to the conclusion of it, this was all very recent, and In fact, let me read you from the Swiss facility. The Swiss facility agreed to help the grieving mum end her life after her only child, aspiring musician Marcus, choked to death 4 years ago. Rudy Habiger, Pegasus founder, told the Daily Mail, I can confirm that Wendy Duffy, at her own request, was assisted to die on April the 24th. Now, that's last Friday. This is very recent. And the procedure was completed without incident and in full compliance with her wishes. I can also confirm that neither we nor any of the professional staff assessing her mental capacity had any doubt as to her intention, understanding, and independence of both thought and action. In historical terms and English law, hers was a case of sane suicide. Wendy chose to die wearing one of her son's T-shirts because it still smelled of him, she said. And she also died with they could choose music, and she chose a beautiful song called Die with a Smile. You may know it, by Bruno Mars and Lady Gaga. And in the interview she gave with a Daily Mail reporter, a woman, she said, I'm sorry, because now I've told you about that song, you'll never be able to hear it in the same way again. And I mean, I played it, and it is a fantastic song, to say the least. So that's Wendy's story. Now, just as a brief background, euthanasia in this country, which is where, or in any country, but here, which is where you assist or encourage someone to end their life, is completely illegal. And if you're found guilty, you're liable to a prison sentence of up to life in prison. Um, assisted dying. Now, the assisted dying bill has already gone through the House of Commons twice. It's now been delayed because we've come to the end of the term, if you like. But there are quite a lot of MPs who are going to resurrect it in the new after the King's speech. And it's only got to be revised by some of the House of Lords revision edits, if you like. So it looks like it will go through. Um, so you will be able to, in certain strict conditions, end your life in an assisted suicide way. Interestingly, her four sisters and two brothers were not told the timeline of Wendy's demise when she was going to die last Friday for their own protection, just in case there was some legal loophole that said, well, they knew when it was going to be and they didn't stop her, so they could be charged, in theory, with assisting a suicide. So she didn't tell them the dates. Obviously, a lot of legal advice was taken there. So that's the story of Wendy, and I wonder if any of that might colour your view a bit. You said that on balance, and I appreciate you said you felt on the fence, and I think a lot of us do. I think that's probably the majority opinion. You know, we sit on a fence thinking, well, yes or no. But I guess if we were walking in someone's shoes, either a relative or, God forbid, ourselves, that would completely possibly change our opinion on something like that. Wendy said her life was agony. She was obviously an intelligent woman. She'd been a former care worker, um, lovely lady, and everything about her quite clearly was lovely. But she could not cope with the loss of her only son. Now, I'm sure there are many people around the world who do cope. I'm not giving them praise against Wendy. I'm not criticizing her, but I think we need to recognize, and I'm sure we do, that anybody suffering the loss, particularly of a child, must go through great difficulties really for the rest of their lives. But you learn, I guess, to manage it. So anyway, that story of Wendy, does it colour your view on what you've said earlier?
Well, first of all, I would like to say I would like to send my deepest condolences to the families of Wendy for losing a loved one, really. Um, Now, I listened intently to the story of Wendy, although only Wendy could tell the story herself, the way that it really affected her emotionally and otherwise. Um, However, I looked at the circumstances and and I think I'm back on the fence fully. I'm thinking, um, now it does raise certain, it does raise questions for me personally. Because at first I was leaning towards life, I was like, okay, so I'm sat on the fence, but slightly leaning towards, against being against it. And now I'm thinking, all right, so now I'm fully back on the fence because I've Wendy's story, you can never, as a man, you can never ever understand what a woman that really wants to have a child goes through. You can never ever understand that. As men, we think, yeah, all right, because men have a kind of a reproductive longevity, if you want, I think there was a case of, I think it was Al Pacino that had a child
Yeah,
at 80 something. So men are slightly, for women, there's a cutoff line. In extreme cases, maybe you go 5, maybe 10 years above the cutoff line, but that's rare. So very rare instances. Now, when I think about a woman wanting a child and, not being able to have a child, that alone, the fear of being barren, the fear of being not being able to call themselves a mom, that alone is something. Now, I then look at the other side of then having lost that child. That's double. That's double the pain. And as such, I have a greater sympathy for Wendy. However, I'm thinking there's other routes. There's adoption, and that doesn't justify anything. It's just this is just my personal opinion. However, there are other routes. There's adoption, there is I mean, my younger brother had a baby last year, so she's almost one now, our Olivia. And I look at her and I call her my child. I say, "Oh, how's my daughter doing?" So there's that sense of, having a close family member, just adopt them in your head. But
mm,
then again, man, different, there's a difference between a man and a woman. Um, and I'm thinking about the sanctity of life. All right, so she's attempted suicide. Would she have chose life if she was completely normal? And normal in context. So normal as in the way she was before the attempted suicide. Some people actually do go back to the way they were after an attempted suicide. Perhaps not fully emotionally, but sometimes some people grow to have an appreciation for life even more after a failed
mm,
suicide attempt. And I looked at all those factors, and I'm thinking, right, okay, so I don't want to be an idiot. I don't want to sound like a fool because I'm failing to take other people's emotions. I'm failing to be empathetic. I'm failing to show sympathy. So I'm just back fully on the fence, and I'm thinking, mm, I would look at it case by case, as in case by case basis, or on a case by case basis. I would look at what the person is going through, how it affects them, which I can never know. Only the person knows.
yeah,
Um, and as such, I'd still sit on the fence and say, well, present your case. Let me hear your case, and then I can decide whether to swing this way or that way, depending on how it motivates me to swing. Um, so yeah, it's a very tragic thing, and when people die outrightly, they don't feel pain. But when people have to go through a lot of be emotional, physical, or even mental pain, it just makes it harder. It's like dying twice, three times, four times all over again. So yeah, again, I conclude by saying, deepest sympathy to the family, condolences to the family of that of the poor Wendy. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
tragedy. Yeah.
It really is a tragedy. Yeah, thanks for all that. I mean, just obviously, this is not what we would call a suicide in the traditional sense of suicide. Suicide is when maybe, I mean, I think going back some years, the coroner's verdict used to be when they agreed that it was a suicide, an intentional one. I think the verdict used to be along the lines of when the balance of the mind was disturbed, which I guess you could argue is or must be the case or not, because I'm sure there are many people who sadly have committed suicide who've done it very rationally and not because their mind was disturbed. Hence the change, perhaps, of intentional or non-intentional. But just to wrap up this bit of suicide, as I've
Mm.
said, it's mainly men in this country, and the closer statistics, I think, in 2024 there were around in the UK around 7,200 suicides, of which about 4,300 or 400 were men. And
Wow.
the age of most risk, if that's the way to put it, is
Mm.
between 50 and 54. Interestingly, I always believed it was rather younger than that, sort of 24 to 35. But the real risk age is between 50 and 54. And as I say, three-quarters are men. And it touches back to what I was saying at the beginning about my little poetry book. Um, that, yeah, for me, I'm someone who does. I think I always have been able to express myself and what I feel. That said, probably if I'm really troubled about something, I might keep it to myself for whatever reasons. And maybe there's something to be said for all of us to find an outlet, whether it is in writing poems or lyrics in songs, as I do, or some people write a novel, others do other things. And something I remember reading that Paul McCartney said a few years ago when he issued two books of all of his lyrics.
Mm.
And he said, people have asked me why I have never written an autobiography. And he said, well, I was never really interested in doing that. He said, but my lyrics, as in these books, it's probably a couple of hundred songs.
Mm.
He said, that is my autobiography. Anybody who wants to know me should look at those lyrics or listen to the Beatles and Wings music. And I thought that's a very good way of putting it because I know in my case, I I'm able, I think, to, well, I know I am, to express a lot of what I feel inside about a situation
Mm.
in the form of a song. And it's a good outlet for me to get things out of my mind, my psyche, or in the form of a poem. I used to write quite a lot of poems in the past. And I think my advice to anybody would be find something. It may be talking to a mate, a buddy, a friend, your partner, but find somebody, find a way to get
Way
things out of your system. Whether that would lower the
that would
suicide
lower
rate,
the
who
suicide rate.
knows? Because everybody says that everybody says with suicides you didn't spot any clue. And I may have said on this before, somebody I knew, a young woman, a few years ago now, 20 years ago, I think, she committed suicide, perhaps less than 20 years ago. And I saw her from time to time, a good friend, and there was no clue in anything about her. And it is what people say. We can think back to somebody, a footballer, Gary Speed, who actually was on BBC on a Saturday lunchtime football focus. I think it was in 2012, something like that. He seemed fine, rational, everything else. That evening, he went out with his wife. I don't know, had dinner or something. They came back. Apparently, they had an argument. The wife just went out to cool off a bit. When she came back, she went to bed. Couldn't She assumed he was somewhere else in the house. He didn't turn up in the morning, and he was in the garage hanged. Now, whether he meant to do that or thought he'd be found, who knows? But that's the tragedy of this. That perhaps, it's we've said before, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem very often. I know it's easy for us to say something like that. What people go through and get to the point of wanting to end their lives, who knows? It must be desperate for them. But yeah, if only people are able to talk to somebody, you think that maybe that would make a difference. Anyways, it's an interesting subject. And
Mm.
for Wendy, I think for my part, I think it would be a good thing if this assisted dying bill goes through Parliament. I mean, we're not political on this podcast. We never have been, and this is not
No.
a political point I'm making because it must go across all kind of colours of opinion. But
Mm.
I just think when someone is in, particularly when someone is desperately ill with something like motor neurons disease, they're totally reliant on others. They have no real quality of life. You can understand that maybe they should have the rights in a humane, caring way to be helped to pass on. So, so yeah, it's an
Mm.
interesting subject. Right, a bit of a change of subject. So
Right.
I'm going to fire a question at you. Would you report somebody who is breaking the law?
It depends. Depends on what kind of law they're breaking. So if somebody is planning to, they don't even have to break the law for me to report them.
Oh, really? I better watch what I say to you in future then. So what do you mean by that then? They're not going to break the law for me to report them. Well, what have they got to do for you to report them then?
Might not like the way they look, you know. I just take one look at them. I don't like the way you look. I'm gonna report you. No, that was a joke.
Getting a bit worried about you, Cuz, I must say. I should choose my words carefully from now on in case you report me.
No,
Go
well,
on,
yeah. So, yeah,
explain.
so yeah, so what I'm saying, even though I was joking earlier, but they don't. It depends on the gravity of the law that they are breaking, or in the process of breaking. So let me just explain. So, if somebody is planning to carry out an attack on a group of individuals, he's planning it. He's not even done it. I would report that person
Of
because
course, yeah.
um if I don't, then I will be blood guilty. I will be blood guilty because I'll be looking at the massacre that this person is successfully committed or carried out, and I wouldn't be able to live with myself. And it doesn't matter. Some people would say, "Oh, it's children, it's women." For me, it doesn't matter. It could be a bunch of people that the society considers not very useful to the society. I don't think the society would consider anybody not very useful. But I'm just saying, extreme cases, I would still report them. Um, that's what I mean by they don't have to break the law for me to report them. They just have to tell me this is their intention. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. I will not tell them that I'm going to report them because I might not live to report them.
Yeah, okay, let me jump in there to interrupt you. That
Right.
that's
Okay.
fine, cuz that's fine. But
Yeah.
what you've done
Mm,
is you've gone straight to an extreme example. Now, of course,
I have. Yeah.
if we get wind of somebody who's going to do something awful, as you say, attack people or drive their car and whatever,
Yeah.
of course, most people would report that. But I'm thinking of a far more possible situation. Perhaps someone you know, they come and tell you, they see you in the street. Oh, hi there, cuz, or you won't call you cuz, he'll call you Em, I expect. But
Yeah.
hi there, Em. Oh, it's my lucky day, you know. I've just got some money out the cash point machine. I put in 20 quid. I asked for £20 and 100 quid came out. So, boy, I've got the money and I'm going to have a slap up meal and I'm going to do this, that, and the other. Now, okay, much you might think depends on what your relationship with that person is. But let's say they're just a mate, someone you know, you might see them regularly, socially. That's more of a question. Would you think, well, actually, that's not a victimless crime because that money belongs to the bank, which in turn, that somebody will lose out somewhere down the line, like the butterfly effect, I guess. So that's more of the sort of thing I'm thinking about.
Yeah. I think in the first place, they'd be very stupid to come and tell me. I think they'd be very stupid to come and tell me.
You probably say, well, look, give me 50 quid of it, and we'll say no more. Now, this is supposed to be a serious conversation, Cuz. Now, what would you
Yes,
do in
yes,
that
yes,
situation?
it is a serious conversation, and I intend to answer it quite seriously, take it seriously, actually. Now, if somebody comes to me and says, "Well, yeah, listen, I've just got a 50 quid out of that cash machine, and I'm quite excited about it." First thing I would do
Just
is
go to the
find
cash machine yourself.
no. First thing,
Sorry, I should interrupt.
the first thing I would do is pretend I never heard it. I'm very good at pretending I never heard things, because I don't want to have to deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with it.
Yeah,
I would say, yeah, 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 yeah. Are you hungry? You want to get something to eat? And he goes, did you not hear what I said? Yeah, 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 it's all right. Yeah. Do you want to get something to eat? And if they insist and say it 3 times, I'll be like, right, okay, so I heard it. You wanted me to hear it. I heard it. Now we're gonna have to do something about it.
so you're sitting on that fence again, Cuz. I think.
I love that fence. I love that fence, bro. Keeps me out of trouble. It keeps me out of trouble.
Yeah,
Do you know how many
it's
times I've gone to Bradford City Center and in broad daylight I've seen guys pull out because I'm waiting for probably I've given someone a lift or I'm waiting to pick somebody up. And some guys will pull up and there'll be a bunch of 4 or 5 people surrounding that person in a car and he hands something out to them and they hand him some money. I know what it is. Everybody that's listening to this show knows what I'm talking about. Does he have anything to do with me? No. I'm going to ring the police and go, oh, I've just witnessed a drug deal. I'm going to be asked to come to the police station, give statement, write this, write that. I ain't got time for that.
yeah.
So that's how I
Look,
deal with
I
my
understand
problems.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's how I
I
deal
do
with my problems.
understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you see, it's easier sometimes to step back and say, well, I don't want to get involved in that. And sometimes that's possibly or probably the wisest course of action.
Mm.
But obviously there may be times when we ought to report something. Now, taking that question then a next stage. So far we've got two big questions I've asked you, and you're sitting on that fence on both of them at this stage. Let's see if we get anywhere with this one. Now, I know
Okay.
you are a dad yourself. You have a
Yes.
son, don't you?
Yes, I
Right.
do.
I'm not sure. How can I ask how old he is?
He's 18 now.
Right. So he can drive. I don't know whether he does drive, but he could drive if
Yeah.
he wants to. He comes home one day and he said, "Dad, I've been a bit silly, really. Um, I did have a drink in the pub. I don't think I was over the limit, but I was just coming around the corner and I knocked the bumper off a car. I hit it and I just panicked a bit. I thought, God, I can't because it's night time anyway. And I've just come home. There's probably a little mark on my car as well. I don't think I did too much damage to the car I hit, but if I'd stopped, so I could have been breathalyzed and I might have been over the limit. So I'm in a bit of a state. So could you make me a cup of tea, Dad, or whatever he might say? Now, think about it. It's very easy for us, and for me as well, if you were asking me to
Mm.
say, well, I march him off to the police station and I do this, well, we
Mm.
may say, oh, no, I wouldn't want to do that.
Mm.
So it could go either way. We
Mm.
may think we would do the right thing, which many would say would be to report it, even if it's your own family member. But
Mm.
in reality, and of course, until we're in that situation, we probably can't ultimately say. But in
Mm.
reality, would you report him? Would you call the police or take him to the police station the next day and explain what's happened? He panicked. He's only young. Please forgive him. Blah blah blah. Or would you say, look, we look at the car, not much damage. We'll keep quiet, but for goodness sake, don't drink and drive again and be more careful. What would
Mm.
your response to that be?
Well, I would, it's very, this is a very difficult one. Yeah. So you got me on this one. Yeah, I must say. Right. So, I would say to him, would you like a cup of tea? He sit down, have a cup of tea. So tell me exactly what happened. Was there somebody in the car? Did you run somebody over? Because sometimes these teenagers have a funny way of withholding vital information. So they'll tell you what they want you to hear and make it light. So
Mm,
if it was a heavy offense, for instance, they'll try to downgrade the gravity of it a little bit. So I would say, listen, is this, are you telling me the truth? Can I see the car to the, that, can I see the damage to your car? Because from there, I can tell, in a way, I can tell if there was a big damage to his car, I can tell relatively what the impact on the other car would be. So I can tell. So I would say, listen, go to bed. We'll talk about it tomorrow. See how you feel about it tomorrow, right? He goes to bed. I go to bed. I give my time. I give myself time to think.
mm,
You need that time. You need that time to think, make the right decision. And he wakes up in the morning. I say, right, okay, so jump in my car. Let's go. You show me exactly where this car is. We'll go there. I look at the car. If it's only a minor scratch, a minor bump, I'll let it go. I will let it slide. I'll just say, yeah, all right, that's fine. Just go home. I'll take care of it. That's it. Um, Now, funny enough, there was a movie on that actually called, is it The Judge or something? But this was more grievous because his
yeah, I
son
remember that.
actually, oh yeah, his
Yes,
son
I
actually
saw that film.
kills,
It's good.
yeah, his son actually killed somebody else. Hi, Tony.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, Tony's here, bro, for the football referee. We're
I'm
just
about to
Oh,
rounding up
ref.
right.
on.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's fine. That's fine. Just join in. Yeah, we'll be rounding up in about 2 minutes anyway. Yeah. So I saw this movie on it, and it was quite interesting because he was a judge, and then he ran over the son of a gangster, and that was yeah. So I would let it slide. I would. And that's me being partial or being too lenient. But I will just let it.
I think
I
probably
would,
what it was, your
yeah,
backside was so sore from sitting on the fence previously with the two things that you decided
yeah,
to make a decision, and good for you. It's a tough
yeah.
one though, isn't it?
It
Because
is.
if
It is.
somebody else is going to suffer, if another family is going to suffer, or the owner of that car will suffer monetarily, there
Yeah.
is a case probably for saying, well, I'll go around there, I'll put it right, I'll explain, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, it's a 50-50 for you, and you've
It
opted
is.
on
Yeah.
the side of family, which I guess is a very honest
Yeah.
response.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess I'm a bad guy.
So
Right.
there we
So
are.
yeah.
Just to say there, before you tie up, we were leading into two or three other areas here.
Right.
The next one was, do we really have free will? So we'll carry that one on next week because it does lead into the next
Right.
few things and what we've already talked about.
Right. Okay. So this is all we've got time for on the alien spaceship. With myself, Emmy Hickins, and he calls me bruv.
No, I don't. So I call you Cuz,
He calls me cause
and and me, Trevor Gear, and he calls me bruv.
hey, it's a goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me too.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So I'm just stop recording.